Shadowsun here. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to this channel, thank you so much for stopping by and watching this video. I am a blind practicing witch, and I talk about my experiences from the perspective of a person who is blind. And in this video, I want to talk about two common questions or, things that people ask me about, and I'm going to tie them into my practice. At first, they're going to be very generalized to being blind and visually impaired. And I also have a blog post in the description below regarding the same topic. So first and foremost, this is all my personal view and perspective. I don't speak for everyone in any community. This includes the blind and visually impaired community. If you want to learn more information, I highly recommend checking out the resources in my first video in Blindness in My Practice Part 1, which can be found in the playlist of Blindness in My Practice if you're interested in more information. Also, I want to say that this is just, again, like something that I personally view, and please be mindful of that when you hear what I'm about to say. So, I know I just repeated that, but I want to kind of emphasize it because I don't want anyone to think that I'm just speaking for everybody, and this is just my own personal thoughts. So, my first point is not everyone reads Braille or listens to audiobooks. And that might sound kind of counterintuitive or counterproductive because you're like, well, what other options are there? Well, first and foremost, generally speaking, most people in general, whether they can see or not, have a preference on what they choose to read and how they choose to read it. For myself, I use Braille, not in like hard copy Braille, but I use electronic means of reading it through items that encompass Braille note-taking devices that allow you to take notes. I mentioned that in my How I Read Books as a Blind Witch video, which you can find below. And also I mention it again when I talk about where I obtain books, such as Kindle books. So that being said, I know some people who prefer to use large print material, whether that's in hard copy or electronic. So they might use Zoom on the Mac, which is a magnification software, not Zoom, the video communications platform. And they may use Windows Magnifier on Windows, or they might use Zoom on iOS, or they may use, which is also magnification, for all Apple devices. Further, some people might just use residual vision to read print. They might change the color, they might change the font a little bit. It depends on what their vision acuity is or degree of vision is, how much vision they have, and things like that. So for myself, Braille allows me to get everything I need to know about the book in question. So how this ties into my practice is I like to understand how things are laid out, how things are done. If I had enough vision to read large print, I would love it because I'd be able to see pictures. I'd be able to understand how altar diagrams are done, like layouts. I'd be able to understand sigils in a more effective way. That being said, if I want to understand all those things, I can use tactile imagery. I can take the concept and understand it from a different perspective. I can take that concept and turn it around and say, okay, how can I create a sigil for myself and then make a tactile version of that sigil? For example, I didn't mention it in the blog post, but I do want to mention it here. Also, one thing I did mention in the blog post as well was talking about like different formats. So I mentioned Kindle books before. That's how I like to read my books. I like to use Kindle. I've used books. I like to use other sources. So electronic formats work better for me. The other thing that Braille gives me too is like when I look at exercises and how to do them, I find audiobooks, for one thing, just put me to sleep. I find processing a bit difficult. I don't retain the information as effectively, so audiobooks don't work for me. So I tend to use Braille on a Braille note-taking device, or I'll use a Braille display, which is just basically like a screen with Braille on it on the bottom. So I could just read the books and exercises. And this comes into play especially because I do a lot of stuff with visualization. So having the ability to read the words, how to visualize whatever I'm visualizing, or I don't feel like I get that the same way through listening. And also just how things are done, energy work, exercises, guided meditations, guided imagery. Those are the ways that I like to use Braille when I read books. And, other people might do a different set of things. Maybe they want to use, like I said, large print or Zoom or, using magnification, or maybe they want to use something else entirely. Maybe they have enough vision to use glasses. Maybe they like to just use pictures, or maybe they would learn better with videos. But not everybody reads the same way. Not everyone likes to use Braille audiobooks, or some people like to use large print. Some people like to use both. Like, I've known people that have used like Braille and audiobooks, and before I used to use text-to-speech and audiobooks. And the cool thing about like Braille and most of these electronic formats as well is that I can use my note-taking device or a Braille display on my computer, on my iPad, on my phone, however I want to use it, and that makes me a little more versatile, because then I'm able to make sure how I can use these devices to read all these books, and I can read them in all different formats in all different ways. And finally, and most importantly, this also can apply to spell crafting and casting too, and I want to get into that in a separate video, so stay tuned for that. And this goes to my next point. Many blind people and several blind people can use flame in their practices, or just work with candles. Some people love burning candles, some people love burning incense, some people love essential oils, as a general rule, right? So when it comes to being blind vision impaired, a lot of people get really scared when I mention I like to use candle magic, or I like to just burn candles or burn incense, because they're worried about my safety, or they're worried about me burning myself. And I'm like, and I remind them that everybody can burn themselves, and everybody has to take the same safety precautions as anyone else. So when I burn my candles, I make sure they have a holder. I sometimes will put a plate down, most of the time actually. I'll put like a little dish, or I'll make sure that there's no flammable objects around. I make sure there's no draft so that the air doesn't make it get any bigger. I take the time to use mediums that work for me, similar to the Braille and audiobook thing, or Braille and large print. I like to use long lighters or long matches. I have used the wooden matches before, and I hope to make a demo video of this at a later date on how I light incense and candles. And because I can see a little bit, I can see most of the time when the flame's going to go up and when it's going to spark. That being said, like, that doesn't always work, so I tend to use a little bit of a tactile sense. Like, I'll put my hand like above, I know I'm putting the hand over the camera, but I'll put my hand above the candle flame just a little bit, or I'll kind of look down as much as I can to see the flame. And plus you can smell it. Like, you can smell when it's burning, you can smell the scent, you can smell the incense. I like to use also, like, the long lighters for grills, but I also like to use the short ones because sometimes it's easier to get to when I'm lighting cone or stick incense, because the cone incense, you have to get a little closer to get it right onto the tip. So I like to use those. That doesn't work for everybody. Some people like to use wax warmers and essential oils because they don't have as much experience with the flames or anything like that. But some people like to use just the regular big lighters. I can't do that. They don't work for me. I never really cared for those. I'd love to get a Zippo lighter, actually. Maybe not for like candles or anything like that for my candle magic, but for like other stuff. And I like to use different types of candles, and I'm going to link you to my intro video because I share some of those candles as well. But some of the candles I like to use include these tea lights here. This is a tea light. I forget the color. I think it's orange. I'm holding it up to my face to kind of look at it. It kind of has a bright color tinge to it. So this is like a small little tea light you can get anywhere. I just got that from my altar there. I also like to use tapers, and sorry for the shifting camera. Yeah, I like to use tapers. I love to use glass jar candles, and that's another thing. Some people love those glass jar candles, and those are really cool because, there's no real risk to a safety situation as long as you've got nothing flammable around when you light them, because they're contained. So that helps some people out who are visually impaired or blind. Other people just like to light whatever, light candles that have no jars or anything in them. Some people like to use novena ones or votives. I like tapers because tapers, you can dress them and do stuff with them. You can do the same thing with jar candles too, but I don't really have a lot of the time. So when I do candle magic and stuff, I like to use things that can burn pretty quick and pretty, and also just like if they're going to take a while, I don't have to watch them all the time. So tea lights are my friend, as are, tapers, like small tapers, like 6-inch ones. I would love to try to use I forget what they're called. they're like these little, I think they're called chime candles. They're these candles that I see them advertised like for spells and stuff. Love to try those one day. Love to use those. It'd be so much fun. Just to learn how to use them. But everybody can, work with flame to some degree. Just when you are blind and visually impaired, you got to try different things that work. I actually have a slight fear of fire, believe it or not, and I didn't mention it in the blog post, and I completely digress. But if I find that's coming into play, I will sometimes light a candle elsewhere, like, in a place that's safe, like a sink or something, just to make sure that it's like lit, and then I'll move it to, somewhere else. But generally, I'm pretty all right with it. So those are just some things I wanted to mention. Please read the blog post. I just mentioned more detail on both of these things. Flames don't have to be scary. Working with fire doesn't have to be scary. Just one step at a time. I remind myself of this all the time whenever I get nervous. And, the same safety precautions are in place. No drafts, no paper, no flammable cloth, no clothing, nothing that can catch on fire. Being mindful of the flame. And people always say, don't leave burning candles unattended. So when I burn my candles, I keep an eye on them. I check on them periodically. I'll look down. I will do other things to make sure that they are not rising in intensity. And I keep them, and this is just something that I want to mention before I end here. One of the things I didn't get a chance to mention in the blog post, but I will mention it because it just came to mind, is, keeping these things, a lot of the time, especially on an altar, people want to put things in a particular way, or they want to put them where it's like aesthetically pleasing, which is fine, but keeping safety in mind, putting it where you can find it. I'll put water down, like a bowl of water or a bottle of water down, to make sure that if something does happen, I can just douse it out with water, or I'll keep a snuffer nearby to make sure that I can snuff the candle out. I know that that's not a favorite in some traditions, but that's just, what goes on. It's safety first, honestly. I wanted to mention that because I got reminded that in a really amazing blog post that I mentioned in the resources in my first blindness and my practice video. So I hope that this video has helped you, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your week and weekend. I hope that in sharing these videos that this will raise awareness and, give a different perspective on all of this related to being blind and visually impaired. So if you like what you see, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends, and I'll speak to you all soon. Many blessings.